Hello everyone, I am Jayant.
I am Harish. Welcome to the Swatantra Show.
We bring you inspiring stories of entrepreneurs building interesting independent businesses, staying bootstrapped. Listen in and enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Swatantra Podcast Show. On this show today, we have Ganesh Shankar. He's the founder of FluxGen Technologies. Uh, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, Ganesh.
Thanks, Harish. It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast. Look forward to talking to you about it.
And I also have Jayant with me, my co-host.
Hello everyone.
Hi, Jayant.
Ganesh, Ritvik, someone I know on Twitter, introduced me to you as a friend who is running a bootstrap business. And then when I looked at your story and that of FluxGen, I have to say I was a bit overwhelmed with that, with the things that you have done both as part of FluxGen and outside it. We'll talk about that. But before that, question that I have is, what experiences from your childhood, education, and professional career inspire you to start up and stay bootstrapped?
There are too many events, but I would state few things. I mean, I definitely think there are some of the childhood events that has influenced. When I was in my I think ninth standard or so, I wanted to actually start a painting class because the previous summer I had actually gone for a painting class. I thought I could also do one. So, and my parents kind of got into this crazy idea of me setting up this painting class for kids younger than me. So that was a great success, and I ended up doing it for next couple of years. And then I that always left that mark in my mind that I could do something on my own. Later, when I went to college, in fact, Ritvik was we went to same college, RV College of Engineering. It was absurd that passing in laboratory exam was becoming difficult during our time, right? It was for 100 marks. So people were not able to do experiments to get results. So what I realized that there is an opportunity to set up a lab and do this laboratory trainings, especially during the time of exams. And I actually set up this lab along. Again, my father kind of supported me on this, and I ended up setting up this laboratory, and I had more than hundreds of students coming to do this laboratory work. And it was like within a year, we had a return on investment. So it always kept I had this in my mind that okay, yeah, I think if I do something, it might work out. And then, of course, immediately after my engineering, back in 2005, I joined a startup, which was not considered as a good thing by most people back then, 2005. I mean, I had got a job in a multinational company, but I chose to take up a startup job. But then I also got an admission in ISE the following year after 1 year working there. So, and yeah, I think when I got into ISE, I was in more of a research mode, but more then I also got a job in a big multinational company, General Electric. So working in General Electric, I remembered of all the good times of starting this painting class or running this laboratory and working in the startup. So I thought, yeah, I should start up. I mean, that was fun. I mean, the comparison of experiences working in a big multinational company. Of course, I had a great time in GE, but I just felt that I should be starting up. And I thought, let me take a chance. I'm not married. I mean, I don't have, much responsibility. I actually took a quick decision and much quicker than many people would think. It's a matter of couple of days. I decided, okay, I'll start up and then I started up. So I would definitely credit it to the childhood days of starting that starting up that painting class and then laboratory as some of influence, inspiration to start up a company like this.
Oh, wow. From like that's like a quite a bit of things, right? Like painting class, laboratory, and then you uh, started up. So, talking about FluxGen itself, could you please talk about what FluxGen does?
So we help industries reduce water consumption. How we do it is we use IoT and data science to find out leakage, wastage, excessive usage of water in industries. So basically, we put this IoT-based sensors in the water infrastructure, whether it is water flow, water level, pressure or energy consumed by water infrastructure, put this data to the cloud and identify inefficiencies through application of data science. And then the customers use our solution on their mobile phone and the web site to identify their infrastructure and see where they could actually reduce water consumption. So this gives alerts to the ground staff and the maintenance head to take immediate action, corrective action, and they could plug holes. I mean, we eventually help them reduce water consumption by up to 30%. In some cases, we have identified more as well.
That's great, Ganesh. Actually, I mean, I personally have not come across many startups into water resource management or maybe a smart city implementation and all that. So just taking things forward. So I personally would like to know, when did you come up with an idea like this, and in what sort of triggered you to start a company like FluxGen into water resource management?
So Jayant, to be honest, I didn't start off with water resource management. I actually, after I left my job in GE, I had a broad career vision for myself. I thought I would want to work on sustainability for rest of my life. And I started with as a projects and consulting company, and we were doing projects on sustainability, which is renewable energy, agriculture, water, and bunch of these things. We did a bunch of interesting rural electrification projects as well using solar. And then one of the projects that we took during this phase was doing water monitoring for a large multinational company. While doing this project, we realized there is huge opportunity to actually build a product, not just do one of those projects that we generally do. And we realized the water scarcity in the country was actually scaring us rather. We saw this I mean, it was a concern as a countryman to see that India is going to, I mean, our country is going to go through this water crisis. And then I saw it's also as opportunity as an engineer to solve this problem. So that's when we decided that we will focus our energy on water management. So yes, I should say with a broad vision of sustainability, it started out, but eventually we decided to focus on water after we hopped into this through one of our projects that we were doing. And this was around in 2016 or so, we got into this project, and now we are a product company and we have our product name as Aquagen.
So basically, you have customers from universities to even a dairy in Pondicherry, from what I learned from your website. So that's very interesting to me, because some of these things like, water management, sustainable water management, and also using tech to do that sometimes can end up as just buzzwords. But FluxGen, and you have managed to do and convince people to adopt this, and you have made them see the benefits of that. So could you please talk about how you went about that? Like, how did you tell the story of FluxGen, and how did it happen? Like, how were you able to kind of convince people to invest in this idea and in these solutions and technologies?
So as I said, Harish, it came in as one of the projects that we are building. So the whole product was driven by customer need when we all started it. So when you're actually solving a problem where the requirement come from the end user, and that it's a kind of a bleeding problem for that customer, then you realize it is not your own completely your own brainchild in building this. You have to give the credit to the first customer who actually has helped you to figure out this such a great problem. So that way, I should give credit to Titan Jewelry Division, that is Tanish, who came up with this problem. And that's how we actually realized there is huge opportunity. So if it was to be something that we were to create out of the blue, then I don't know. It might have been using just the buzzword of water management and things like that. But we heard our customers speak more often than we just try to tell about our technology. So this interaction with the customer more and more, it is like just like in any other context of life, finding the truth of life. The same way, entrepreneurship is also finding the truth. What is really required for your customer. So in this process, we were able to jot down what are the main pain points of a customer, and then we find an archetype of customer. Of course, we started with a company like a manufacturing industry. We figured out that a dairy or a food processing industry consumes a lot more water than some of these manufacturing setup. We also realized textile industries use a lot more water. Likewise, hospitals are unable to manage their water. So going deeper into this whole journey helped us figure out that where the value of the solution can be high. And when we started solving problems to these set of customers, we were able to figure out the benefits for them, and we started getting business from one customer referring to another customer because they could see the benefit of reducing water wastage by actually using our solution. So it all started with just let's measure and what could we do about it. After we started measuring, we could identify a lot of insights from this data, and that led to building our product. So, well, I think if you ask me, there's nothing in this world that could be managed without measuring, and we just started with water. So yes, and today, because of indulgence with multiple customer conversation and things like that, we've been able to figure out the stronger use case.
Wow, Ganesh, actually, I love the sentence that you said, manage, there is nothing that can be managed without measurements. It actually gives it actually has a lot of bandwidth, if you were to ask me, because any planning for that matter will start with the measurement and the evaluation. So just taking a leaf from your previous conversation, so I personally love stories behind how you got your first customer and how did you go about sort of pitching for your first customer and getting. What is the story behind you getting Tanishq as your first customer?
It's a very interesting story actually, because we had exhibited in an event where we just had a product idea of water management. We had not particularly implemented it any large scale or so. And we made a wonderful demo model of putting up this water pipes and water flow meter and some taps and running a demo where you could see it live that how you would be able to monitor water. We had built the circuits and all this to a software at a very fundamental level or a basic version of it. And one of a senior person from this facility actually visited our stall, which was happening in Bangalore International Exhibition Center. He was actually thrilled, and he asked us a lot of questions. He even saw the demo. He actually understood the demo really well. And he actually said, we would want this system at our facility, and please come out to our facility, we'll have a discussion. And we were like not even having a product, full-fledged product at that time. We were doing some kind of a system where we would be able to monitor electricity at that time, or rather in a more this one manner. He said, no, we don't want electricity. We want water. So we went there and we had this conversation. Though we had not done some kind of a really successful big installation or anything like that, it was more like a demo. This person actually had trust in us. He could actually discuss, and he thought that, oh, these guys could do it. And it's a Tata company. Tatas always have big heart. So they actually gave us this project. and we actually ended up building the entire product from the time we started that discussion till we got the purchase order, and we took additional time to complete that project. So this project actually happened, and simultaneously we ended up building the product. So I am forever indebted to this gentleman. His name is Mr. Murli from Titan, who actually gave us this opportunity to work on this thing. And today we have been able to do so far so much.
Wow. So basically from that first customer, you started building out the product as well. So in terms of developing the product as you went along, can you talk about that story as to what are the things that, that gave you the confidence that this is something that is sustainable, will work? And also, what are the kinds of challenges that you faced building a product and a product company?
As I said, it started as a projects and consulting company. So we had kind of revenue coming from other projects and service projects that we were doing. And when we got this opportunity, we started catering to the customer need, and the requirement from the customer acted in terms of coming up with a priority, what the customer need. So we focused on building a minimum viable product because, as a startup, you're limited with time, money, resource, and various other factors. So we ended up building that would serve the immediate need of the customer. And as we actually served the immediate need of the customer, we looked into the secondary requirement and tertiary requirement over a period of time, based on how we could actually generate revenue and how we could get more people into the company. We ended up building those features into the product. So, money is the bloodline of a company. If you don't have, you can't do anything. So, with the available thing, we were fortunate to have a wonderful team. I am really thankful to my team that we put in more hours when we actually got a project like this, and we could actually identify the opportunity that lie across in the future, and we ended up making something that would immediately solve the customer need, and then subsequently started talking to more customers who would need this solution and where it would make a match, like the product market fit exercise. While doing this exercise, we realized what are the common features that will go into this product, what would actually go as a separate feature if you are serving a particular vertical or a particular segment of customer. So this is how we ended up actually building our tech stack.
So one follow-up question, when you are building for a particular customer, there is also the challenge that you may build something that is specific to that customer, right? So, but the fact that you were then able to sell to other customers and have been successful in that means that you kind of overcame that problem. So how did you manage to do that? Because it is one thing to be a services business doing multiple projects for people, but then doing something for a customer and building a product out of it, that's a whole different story, right? So how did you go about that?
So let me tell you that water management in India is very prehistoric. So we still use water management in terms of taking hand readings or even using mechanical water level measurement. So so when it came to water, so since it was so low tech that the problem that we are solving was kind of fundamental for most industries, to be honest. So the minimum viable product that I was telling you about kind of matched almost all, because as I said, they were not just zero, they were negative in terms of the way they were managing the water. So that's how in this particular case of water management, we started off with a very general, that is a common thing that could help most of the customers. But having said that, the real catch was in the way consumption was monitored and analyzed. So a dairy industry would have different set of processes, whereas a textile industries would have different processes. and an hospital would be entirely different. So that's where we actually had decided that we should not go broad, we should go thin in terms of verticals. And especially when we are building the data science models in our company, the machine learning algorithms, identifying different processes in different this one. So yes, I think when we started off, it didn't really have any unique value proposition. We were just getting this data from various infrastructure. It was a pure IoT based solution, not having the data science component. But as we proceeded ahead, we realized that it is not possible to just go broad and give that high value proposition. So high value proposition came from the data science perspective, and I would say yes, it still does. We are still not going into any and every other industry, though we started with any industry or any this one. That's when our exposure was lacking. But after we got into a bunch of some of this programs, accelerators, and so we actually got some exposure. I should also confess that I don't come from I don't come from a business family. So I come from a family of teachers. So I had to learn many of these things by doing stuff. So yes, the product market fit exercise helped us to figure out that where we should serve what customers we should serve.
Wow. So it's basically learning on the go is what we sort of do as well. So when we started something, that's exactly what we had. We went broad, then we sort of analyzed what works or what is a market fit meant for our particular solution, and then we designed a product. I mean, that is a very inspirational story, Ganesh. So again, like when you were talking about the product market fit, right? I would love it if you could just sort of tell our listeners in terms of who are the companies that can get associated with FluxGen in terms of who qualifies for your solution, if I may ask it in that way.
Sure, Jayant. So we actually cater to broadly food processing industries. Like customers, we have customers like Britannia, Lactalis, dairy companies like Winner Dairy, Pondicherry, Cocoa Milk. So food processing is one of our major segment. We've actually been serving the textile industry as well. So textile industry consume huge amount of water, and we have identified the kind of processes involved in it. And we help textile industry. And recently we have actually started helping hospitals. So hospitals play very, very important. Hospitals consume huge amount of water, and because they also believe that they are there to heal the society, not to harm the society. So they are very conscious about water that gets into the environment. So if you can actually analyze the water consumption in these facilities, they could actually be more conscious in what they put to the environment. So these are our major three segment that we cater to. However, we are actually working with partners and understanding, doing continuous research in terms of water usage in few of the manufacturing facility, because that's where we started. And yes, we are definitely going to cater to the manufacturing sector as a whole in the long run as well.
That's really nice. So do you also cater to a restaurant / hotel business as well? Because if you were to sort of immediately talk about water consumption, and that is one industry which consumes a lot of water as well. Do you have any cases in terms of restaurant and hotel industry?
So restaurant and hotel industry would definitely be in the long run, not immediately, because their kitchens consume water, and many times there is not people are not cognizant about where the water is wasted and things like that. But as I said earlier as well, we for any company, you look into what is the maximum impact that you can give with the minimum that you could do. It's like there's always small enough to do, big enough to matter is something that runs in most of the entrepreneurs' mind. So in that way, these industries that I'm talking about consumes water in lakhs of liters, like kind of millions of liters, right? So we are focusing on these facilities which are huge guzzlers of water. But as we grow, I'm sure we would even be catering to a lot of such facility as well. But currently, as I said, the industries that I mentioned are the huge guzzlers.
So Ganesh, in getting the word out, or in getting your after your first customer, the second one, the third one, and the subsequent ones, what played the most important role? I know there is an active outreach that you would have definitely done, but how much did the word of mouth help from your existing customers, and also for your prospects? When you what from your experience, how much of the social impact of conserving water and using water in a way that is sustainable, how much has that played a part in convincing your customers, prospects, and customers to adopt these technologies than merely about, what if I save X liters of water, I'll save this much money? How much of it has been, how much of it has been the social impact part versus the financial gains part?
Yeah, to answer that, I should say when I started my initial career in sustainability was always seen as a social impact, and it was also seen as some kind of a corporate social responsibility in that way. But as we talk today, it has actually become sustainability has become a business imperative, right? I mean, people see sustainability not just only from the social angle, but it is a way to make them more profitable or reduce their expense. So the industry is actually driving in that direction. Initially, we were trying to pitch in that this one, but when during our conversation we realized it's actually a financial benefit that they're going to get by using this than actually the overall scheme of sustainable development goal. But having said that, the way the water is priced today is very, very less compared to the availability. I mean, the water availability 10 years back, and if you can count it today, it's way too different, right? But the way we are, I mean, whether it is from the government or various other, there are various reasons why you can't increase the price of water. So that way, the pollution control boards have also become stronger over a period of time. So in a way to make sure that while the water cost cannot be increased to a significant extent, there are a lot of pollution control board norms that industries have to adhere to be operational. So the cost and the compliance playing a crucial role, it has become kind of a very important decision that is also discussed in boardrooms today on how do they conserve water. And not just that, India today have a separate ministry for water called Jal Shakti. So there are sustainability officers, and now sustainability is actually going into, I mean, it's talked about at all levels. So now businesses are so clear on how they utilize their sustainable practices to make sure that the industry can be more profitable. So all this conversation today is helping us also to make sure that we can reach out to more customers. And as I said, if an industry is consuming more than a lakh liter of water, it's already in their cost, right? So it doesn't become too difficult to take the conversation many times. But of course, if the industry has not been in a position to actually be in a profitable state, many times water and very other resources are neglected. But that's why we also focused on industries which can actually make a very conscious decision, both from their financial and their sustainability point of view.
So Fluxgen has been, as you said, you have built the product from, from the working with customers, and from like you use the services projects that you had to fund some of these work, and it has been in a bootstrapped mechanism that you have built this, right? So what are your thoughts on, building companies in such a bootstrapped way? What are the nice things of being bootstrapped, as well as the challenges of being bootstrapped as well, in your opinion?
So you couldn't have asked me this question anytime better, because today, we are going through COVID. So all the business plans that we would have had and the business model that we would have built can just go out of the way, and you would be like, oh no, I can't run a company on this kind of business plan because the world is going to be a little different, or rather very different. Right. Same thing I would say is it happens. COVID kind of situation happened to all the startup all the time because of some or the other reason. COVID today it's affecting all of us, but startups actually go through this COVID kind of situation multiple times. So if when your business plan is not, you're actually thinking of fine tuning your business plan in this duration. If you are dependent on an external fund, it becomes a lot complicated. And if you have actually got invested, then you don't have the flexibility or even to make some changes, at least drastically, in your business plan. So that has really helped us as well. So as I said, we started out with various other sustainability technologies, and we were trying to do the product market fit. Had we raised fund before doing product market fit, it would have been very difficult to actually maneuver in that journey, right? So in a way, since we were self-funded or customer-funded rather, it helped us to stay grounded and build a product that would do eventually you can sell at a scale, right? So I would say that the advantage of bootstrapping, to me at least, has been in being open to new ideas and figuring out the opportunity that lie across you while you're building a new product, and also understanding how the scenarios are changing and still you could adapt to that and build it. So I would have been pretty confused if I had got funded like say the last Christmas, and today we have COVID, and I didn't know how to even take a company completely with confidence with all the stakeholders when it was funded with a different business model.
True, very interesting, because I remember Jason Fried, who runs Basecamp, right? He keeps talking about, $1 profit is like fuck you money. So, so nothing beats being profitable. Yeah. So moving beyond FluxGen, because I know you have like quite a few interesting things that you do. You also you did research at IISc, and now you also do teaching at IISc. So how has been that experience, and how does that impact your work at FluxGen, or impact influence? When I say impact, it's not in a negative way, but positive influences of that on you running FluxGen.
So as I said, I don't come from a family of business, but I come from a family of teachers. So my mother always thought, my mother's father was also a teacher, and my father is a teacher, my sister is a teacher. So it's always like kind of teaching gives you that kind of family thing. So and to be honest, for an entrepreneur, teaching or whatever that mentoring or being that is a very fundamental skill set one should have. So in a way, I thought I should actually go back to my alma mater. I did my research there, and it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever lived in, the Indian Institute of Science campus. So, and I get to breathe good air in the campus. So I decided, yes, I think I should offer a course, and especially in the learning that I've had all these years. And I see a lot of benefits, not just getting that great air to breathe. I get to learn with a lot of these students. A teacher the title is teacher, but the learning happens to a teacher more than many times a student. So in this process, for last 3-4 years, I've been offering this course on IoT, whether it is product prototyping in IoT or IoT and data science for clean tech and agri tech, or industrial IoT. All these subjects, some way or the other, align to what I do at FluxGen. So there's a constant learning that I actually gain when I actually interact with my students, and I give them assignments. They actually submit the assignment and I learn from it. And the discussion in the classroom many times helps in multiple ways to go about it. And I also invite a lot of speakers to my classroom. And these people have also enriched the overall experience of the students and, of course, my own learning. So I feel all these things has played a significant role in building a business. And I should also say that I started teaching much before I started FluxGen. So it was actually an alternate source of revenue before I started the company so that I could pay my bills. So today I see it as a kind of a very, though I started it, as I said, to act as my source of revenue before starting the company, but today it acts like a kind of a foundation for many of my thought process that come along. So, and I've also been able to even do some research with the scientists at my alma mater through this classrooms program and other things.
What was the most unexpected lesson that you have learned in leading FluxGen? Like you rightly said, you're not from a business background, and you are from a background where most of the family members are teachers. So I'm sure you will have a lot of these kind of unexpected things that happen, and so you have not planned for. So what is the most what is it that comes to you as soon as I say what is the unexpected lesson that you've got?
So there are many. So, but I'll tell you something very recent. During this time of this COVID situation, there is a interstate travel ban, and we had orders in our hand which we had to implement. I mean, at the end of the day, the customer is looking for the solution. And our solution primarily involved some of our team members going to the site and setting up this IoT devices. And because the situation was like this, I just opened up myself and asked friends and all the network that I've had that I have to do this installation. Can you suggest some way how I could go about? I got so many helping hand saying that I would help you build this. You courier this to Coimbatore. I would go and do the installation and things like that. And then we actually had to make our solution more plug and play. We made a video of how to do the installation of our product so that anybody could do this installation. And while doing this, we realized that we actually made a solution that we shouldn't be restricted that we should sell it in India. We could sell it anywhere in the world. So a very, you will read a lot in all the MBA books that convert a threat into opportunity. This was one of those, which was a big threat because we could not implement our solution in a site. But because it had to be done, we came up with new ways of doing it with the contacts that we had in these places and made sure that it's a plug and play so that we can pretty much deploy our solution anywhere. So now we are thinking of why don't we expand our solution immediately to countries in Middle East and other places in Africa. So this comes on top of my head as an unexpected thing leading to something very interesting and potentially prosperous.
The other thing that I wanted to talk was, I learned that, you have a few more interests apart from leading FluxGen, doing teaching. You also do cycling. You have a very active blog. So first of all, how do you manage time for so many of those? I mean, each of them can be quite time. Each of them requires some amount of dedication of time to that. And you have like multiple of these. So how do you manage those, and what drives you to do some of those things like cycling, blogging, etc.?
No, I should say I know people who do much, much more than me, and I get inspired by them. So you have been very kind. I see. The thing is, all these things are some way aligned to just like how a entrepreneur has a vision for a company, a mission for a company. I realize it is even more important for an entrepreneur or an individual for that matter, any individual to have a career mission and a career, or rather a personal mission and a personal vision statement. So I definitely think this the world is in a state where, like, if you consider the sustainability or the way the pollution and all those things really bothers. So I've always wanted to cycle, and I realized this also aligns with what I think. I allowed cycle all my childhood days. I have this thing ever since. I even today I don't have a driving license for any automobile, any two-wheeler or a four-wheeler or anything. I have a cycle thing. So the point what I'm trying to say is, while you have a larger goal for your life, and then you actually see that some of the things that you already do align with it, you end up doing only some of those a lot than doing too many things a little. So I should say I'm not doing too many things. I'm just doing one of the things that I want to do rest of my life is cycling. So yes, I think it falls under my long-term, my own personal mission statement and this one. So I want to live in a world where it's good. So what am I doing good to it? So I feel the least I could do is I could cycle, and if more people start working in this direction, I know the quality of air would be really good, and I and you could breathe better, and our parents who can only become older like us also can breathe better. So I mean to say, long story short, it is not I'm not doing too many things, but I do things. Some of the things that I do, I strongly believe in it, and it's very enjoyable anyway. It is not just like out of pain. And as far as cycling is concerned, I dedicate all the national holidays, that is Republic Day, Independence Day, Gandhi Jayanti, to do a long distance cycle ride, like whether it's going from Bangalore to Goa or Chennai, or even a short ride to is nearby Kanakpura or something like that. So yes, I don't know if I answered your question, but it some way falls under what I want to do in the long run.
Actually, you did answer his question in a very different way, saying that whatever you're really kicked about is something you will always find time to do those things. But unfortunately for us, we are not able to say that is because we are stuck in our 9 to 6 job, or maybe 9 to 10 job, or whatever it is, and we don't get much time to sort of manage our personal interest versus professional interest. So that is the reason why, in a way, very good and detailed answer. So now that we are speaking in terms of time management, and I mean, of course, you being into so many different things and trying to do sort of trying to excel everywhere. So what is that one strategy that when, for example, everyone will have a go-to strategy, something if stuff gets going, this is what I'll get stuck to, right? So a strategy that you always use to take your decisions in maybe in personal or in a professional life. What is it, that one strategy, if you have one?
To be honest, I didn't have a strategy for a long time, and I used to really suffer because of it. It was very miserable with not having. But over a period of time, I've identified this thing into some kind of a four-quadrant approach. So there is something that is very urgent, or rather urgent and important. There's something that is not urgent but still important, and there is something which is not important but urgent, and there are some things which are neither urgent nor important. So I started classifying things. I mean, somehow it started happening automatically in my life after some time. I mean, life puts you to a situation that it has to happen after some time, right? So and I realized that urgent and important, I have to take care of it immediately, not do any second late, just do it right now. And that's something that you take care of immediately. And there is something which is not urgent but important. I mean, it will be eventually become urgent and important if you don't take care of it, or if you don't plan it. So I plan those things which are not urgent but important, right? And that's when when it as a time comes, it becomes you have enough time to complete it. But these things which are not important but urgent, not important to you, but it might be important to somebody else. So you delegate that work, right? So identifying which is urgent but not important, you delegate, and that way you are removing a lot of clutter from your table. That way you and the things which are neither important nor urgent, you have to identify them first and not do it. So in a way, this strategy, I don't know if it helps, but has helped me at least to identify how I should prioritize my task and focus on those.
It's actually a wonderful strategy, Ganesh. When I was consulting as well, so this is first thing that we normally do. Any business question that we have or any objective that client gives us, the first thing we do is we put it into something called as 2x2, which exactly you summed it up, which is a quadrant. So we have four things. We'll say what is what, but this is a very nice thing. So you have given it a very good spin in terms of personal life as well. How you can use a business learning for your personal life to take a decision. Very nice. Very thought provoking.
Thank you.
So, Ganesh, I think we are kind of coming to the last question that I have. We call this the Swatantra podcast show. So, in your opinion, what makes someone or a business Swatantra or independent?
So, so a business which becomes freedom has that kind of freedom is one where everybody in the whole organization, whether it is the just somebody an intern to somebody who is a CEO or CXO in the company, feel comfortable to communicate with each other and don't have any kind of inhibition or doesn't have any fear or any kind of anxiety or anxious. They can completely freely communicate with anybody in the organization. I think that's when, in my personal opinion, you become swatantra. And if you are able to grow an organization like this for a long duration, it's bound to become successful. And if you are building a value system and culture in the company with such as a framework or such as an outcome, I think we will become swatantra.
Oh, that's very nice, Ganesh. I think I said my question was last. I just learned from Jayant that he has one final question. So go ahead, Jayant.
Yeah, thank you, Suresh. So, yeah, I mean, this is more a generic question, Ganesh, in terms of see the very thought of doing a podcast like this is to sort of get someone out there who's listening to this podcast, make him interested in what other things are happening, and if in case he or she is interested to pursue it, this can be a stepping stone for that kind of decision. So which is what our prime motive as well. So in terms of that, if there is one person, if there is one listener who wants to sort of pursue or want to get into renewable energy, what advice would you give him or her?
So I think if somebody wants to get into renewable energy, I'll tell exactly what I did. I worked in a company called Selco soon after I left my job in GE because I didn't know ABC of renewable energy. So one of my advisors, also my uncle, he told me, why don't you work somewhere before you want to start a company in renewable energy? I approached a professor from IISc, said, I want to work in this company, and he connected me there. So, and I got some reasonable learning in that company, and I then started a business in that direction, right? So I would tell the same thing. I mean, work somewhere and get some experience in renewable energy if you have not got, because there are some mistakes you got to do on your own, that is there, but there are many things that you can learn from others. Like there is a Kannada saying, Kelvam Ballavarinda Tididu, Kelvam Malpeirinda Kandu, Halavam Swata Madi Tidi and the Sarvagna. So this translates to some things you just learn by directly learning from others, something you learn by observing others. The rest of the things you learn on your own. So that's what I would say. Don't miss out on the learning from others part, because the things that you want to learn on your own will anyway happen.
Oh, that's amazing, Ganesh. I think I'm currently one of the books that I'm reading is from this guy called Shane Parrish about the great mental models. It's about, what you can learn from things that other people have already figured out. So that kind of, I kind of recollected that when you said, learn from others as well, and you don't have to learn everything on your own. So Ganesh, it has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for your time. on a weekend morning to spend with us. Thank you, Ganesh. Thanks. This was like a very interesting and insightful conversation that we had.
Thank you so much, Harish. Thank you so much, Jayant. I mean, you really made my Saturday great. You asked me questions and I had to think through an answer. I don't know if my answers were good enough, but at least I enjoyed it. That's what I could say. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Ganesh. There is no good or right or wrong answers, Ganesh. We personally enjoyed the conversation. It's basically to just know the journey which you had, and I mean, it has really been amazing talking to you, especially, last part, of course, Harish and I are entirely biased. So as soon as you said something about Kannada, I'm like, okay, we are like very, very, our eyes lit up like that. So it was really nice conversation that we had, and I wish you all the best with whatever you're doing. I'm pretty sure you will have all the success, and I'm sure this pandemic also will just go off and you will see all the success. Okay. Thanks a lot for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ganesh.